Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 151. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. A happy 4th of July to everybody out there listening. Hopefully you have a great day and a safe holiday at that. Dave, how you doing?
I'm ready to put it in reverse today.
What does that mean?
You know that video that roams around every 4th of July with Terry in the wheelchair and setting the fireworks off, and he can't get the. It's an older video on YouTube that circulated for a while. Terry is the guy in the wheelchair that tries to light off those fireworks, and he can't put his wheelchair in reverse, and the fireworks are going off right next to him, and somebody's yelling to him, "Put it in reverse, Terry, put it in reverse." I think he ended up getting a new wheelchair out of all that and all years ago. But I would expect that video to circulate around, or what's left of Twitter. I should say today. They got that thing pretty messed up right now. But my big concern is hopefully, I get real happy when 4th of July is in the middle of the week and not on the weekend, because obviously I have a dog, and anybody with a dog listening to this can probably relate. Dogs don't generally like fireworks going off right outside of their house. And I know in the past, in the neighborhood we live in, normally it's not that bad, but I think in the past when 4th of July has been on the weekends, man, they get right out there in the street. And I'm paying for all the things that I used to do as a kid that probably drove adults crazy. So I'm getting a dose of my own medicine. So obviously hoping tonight that there's no fireworks outside that drive the dog crazy. But yeah, look, I mean, slow time of the year right now, right? Mandatory mini camps over with. Got that, what is it, 6-7 week lull until training camp starts at the end of the month, and not a lot of news going on right now.
Nope, not at all. One last 4th of July question for you, though, Dave. Are you a hot dog eating contest guy? Are you going to tune in? I think Joey Chestnut says he wants to break his own record this year. Yeah,
I'll probably watch it just out of sheer fact that, and here's the other thing right now, every dang time the Pirates play a West Coast team, even if it's in Pittsburgh, and specifically if it's out here in the West Coast like the Dodgers, they black me out from this. From these games. And I think the other night the Brewers game was an Apple TV only game, and
that was the walk-off. I couldn't watch it. It was on Apple TV.
How does Major League Baseball expect people to watch their product? I mean, and I've been a subscriber to MLB TV for years, and it seems like I run through a long stretch of games where, I get all, because this is the only time of year I can only watch the Pirates, and or at least a game all the way through. And lately I've been missing a lot of those as well too there. So what was the original question?
A hot dog eating contest. You took that in a different direction.
Yeah, I sure did. Did you see the stat? Boy, we're going off the rails here early here, but Americans supposedly eat something like, was it 70-something hot dogs a year?
Yeah, I do my part. I try to boost that number up. I'm a hot dog guy. Yeah.
I mean, how many hot dogs do you?
I don't know if it's 70.
Do you eat 30? You think?
Yeah, I'd say probably do 30 a year. What about you? Are you hot dog?
Man, I might eat 3 or 4 a year.
Year, that's it.
Maybe. And I mean, it's not like it's not like I dislike them. It's not, it's not my food of choice, I guess there. So I was kind of blown away to see those kind of numbers. Because what, 70? That's a hot dog. What, 75 a year would be what, like a hot dog? Or 70 a year would be like a hot dog every 5 days, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so about once a week. That seems reasonable.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Not to me. All right. We hit baseball. We hit 4th of July. We hit Terry in the wheelchair. We hit hot dog. I might tune into that, though, today. We'll see.
All right, let's talk about some Steelers here. Not that there's any urgent news going on, but before we get into your 90 and 30 series and kind of continue to talk through those names, let's talk about some other things that we've listened to and read about and written about. And let's start here with Broderick Jones, Pittsburgh Steelers first round pick. And I thought you had a really interesting article about the pretty exclusive club that Jones would join if he becomes. Is it if he becomes the week 1 starter or just starts at all his rookie year?
It is week 1 starter at an offensive line position, and I'll kind of clarify why I had to make that a little bit specific too. And this club, according to the research that I did of week 1 rookie offensive lineman starters for the Steelers, isn't very long. However, it recently grew by 2 and in the same year. And obviously I'm talking about Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr. just a couple of seasons ago in 2021. Both those guys started week 1. Obviously Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle and Kendrick Green at center. And boy, what a monumental occurrence that was, right? And it kind of played out as not being all that positive either when it came to those two there. But those two guys, Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr., are the most recent additions to the club that had been really small ahead of them doing so. You go back to the first occurrence that I found of this happening with the Steelers with a rookie offensive lineman starting week 1 was Terry Long way back in 1984. That year, Terry Long was a 4th round draft pick of the Steelers out of East Carolina. He wound up opening his rookie season as the team's starting left guard. And there was a reason that happened because then starting left guard Craig Wolfley, who everybody should recognize that name, was sidelined for that week 1 contest after experiencing sudden back pain pregame. That game against the Chiefs is actually on YouTube as well, too. And boy, did that send me down a rabbit hole.
I can only imagine.
Yesterday, you know how it is. You pull up these games looking for a specific thing. You turn around 35 minutes later and you're watching the dang game. But even if you look at if you go to the right after the opening kickoff and the graphics and they show who the starting linemen are, it shows Craig Wolfley as being the starting left guard in that game, but evidently he had some sort of sharp pain, sudden back pain pregame that ended up him not playing in that game, and Terry Long ended up making the start at left guard in place of Craig Wolfley for that game. Terry Long went on to start 7 games in total as a rookie for the Steelers in 1984, and he wound up playing 89. Or starting 89 for his 8-year career in Pittsburgh there. So he was the first occurrence that I could find as far as a rookie Steelers offensive line starting week 1. After that, Tom Ricketts in 1989, he was a first-round selection out of the University of Pittsburgh. His first NFL start also came in week 1 of his rookie season. However, there's another kind of asterisk, I guess, if you will, when it comes to that. He came out of Pittsburgh as thought to be the left, left tackle, starting left tackle. His first start came at left guard as well too. And that happened because he suffered a thumb injury that summer, I think June or July, broke a thumb or something along those lines. And the decision was made to play him at left guard to help him protect the injury per se there. So he eventually moved back to left tackle during his rookie season, but he only wound up starting 2 games that year, the first 2, in fact. And in total, Ricketts started just 13 games in his 3 seasons in Pittsburgh. for the Steelers, but he was also a week one rookie starter on the offensive line for them. Then you have to fast forward all the way to 2000 to Marvell Smith, second round draft pick, obviously out of Arizona State. And by week one, he was his rookie season, he had secured the starting right tackle position. And he went on to start 108 games for the Steelers in his 9 seasons in Pittsburgh. And obviously most of those came as left tackle. So through 2000, as far as I can find, you had 3 rookies on offensive linemen for the Steelers who started week one for the team. The next occurrence was 10 years later, obviously Marquise Pouncey, right? First round draft pick out of Florida. Remember the, I don't know, you probably just, how old were you in 2010, Alex?
Oh God, was I 17?
17. Woo. All right. Got your driver's license.
No, I was so scared. I'm taking down a rabbit hole for a second. I was like terrified of driving growing up. I didn't start driving until I was in college. So yeah, I was.
Wow. No way. Right.
Yeah. I think you were probably a little different. You were driving
I was
well before 17.
I was still in the old man's car at like 12, man.
Yeah, we're a little different.
Yeah. 2010, obviously Pouncey was the first round draft pick out of Florida that year. And that summer he beat out veteran Justin Hartwig, for the starting gig. And, obviously he started week one and really never looked back, from that point. And then from 2010, you got to go all the way to 2021, as I previously mentioned there with Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr. So obviously Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr. are still under contract with the Steelers. Big question about, what's going to happen with Kendrick Green this offseason here. But Dan Moore Jr. is obviously the other guy that Broderick Jones appears to be battling for a starting spot there. So, history, it would be, even though, we had the recent occurrences here with Kendrick Green and Dan Moore Jr., overall history's not on Broderick Jones' side when it comes to being a week one starter. But obviously this is a new year and history is, indeed that history, right?
Sure. It's so, if Jones becomes the week one starter, he'll only be the 3rd tackle to do so, with Smith, Moore, and then himself.
You would be correct, and he would be just the 2nd left tackle if indeed that's what it is. Or no, he would be the 1st left. No,
Moore was. Yeah, I think Smith was at right tackle.
Yeah, 2nd left tackle.
Right.
Dan Moore was the 1st.
Okay. So interesting, nugget there. I think obviously the way that rookies have been introduced to the NFL has shifted for both Pittsburgh and league wide over the last 5 to 10 years. And so they're playing quicker and more immediately, as you are getting with Green and Moore and just the other, rookie draft picks. And so, I think the history has certainly changed when you compare it to the 80s and 90s, but interesting tidbit there. I was wondering that myself a while back about the history of, rookies starting, left tackle starting. I knew Moore, obviously, one of those names, didn't know the rest of the list. Marvell Smith, man, what an underrated Steeler. I'm thinking about doing like an underrated Steeler series, and that's a guy that's going to be on that list. Even Steelers fans, I know he had the back injuries, but when he was healthy, he was a great left tackle.
Man, and what would his career have been like had he not had those back injuries?
Sure.
Because he ended up even playing 9 seasons in Pittsburgh there, and now he did miss, even his rookie season. I think he wound up starting just 9 games that season because of injuries. I can't remember if it was a back right off the bat with him or not there. But imagine if he had been, epitome of health for those 9 seasons.
Right. I mean, let me take you down a different rabbit hole. Who are some of the most?
Well, it looks like gophers out here on the course today, doesn't it?
We're digging a lot today, Dave. Who are some of the most underrated Steelers, even by the Steelers' own fan base? Everybody says Aaron Smith. He's underrated by the NFL media at large, but not by the Steelers fan base. Everybody knows how critical and good Aaron Smith was if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But even by those who wear the black and gold, who are those underrated names? I think Smith is one of those guys that kind of gets forgotten about. but frankly, one of the best left tackles in Steelers history. The competition there is not particularly strong. I think John Kolb probably edges him out, but I think Smith is up there.
Yeah, I do think he's up there, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I think Alejandro Villanueva was incredibly underrated by the fan base, and he's going to have that streak of consecutive games started at left tackle for the Steelers for quite some time. Hopefully a guy like Broderick Jones can break it. But I mean, just a law of averages aside with nicks and injuries in the NFL, it makes the streak that Alejandro Villanueva put together with consecutive starts at left tackle. I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to live long enough to see that broken there. And yes, Alejandro Villanueva had his problems. He had his kryptonite with certain dudes in the NFL. But I mean, for how he got to where he got, and for the stretch of games that he was able to do it for, I consider him extremely underrated.
Okay. Anybody else that comes to mind? Any maybe less recent players? Some of the names on my list: Marvel Smith. I think even Kendall Simmons kind of gets forgotten about.
Yeah, Kendall Simmons gets forgotten about. I think Matt Spaeth was incredibly underrated for what he was as a blocking tight end. I mean, there was a span of 3 or 4 years there where, quite honestly, he was probably one of the top 2 or 3 blocking tight ends in the NFL, I think, and even better than Heath Miller.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he was a house, he was built, and that was his role. So I'm with you on Spaeth. I think other names to come to mind for me, Deshae Townsend. I talked about him recently. It's him, Ham, and Lambert in the, 20, I forget the stat that I had there. I think 20 interception, 15 sack club or something like that. It's a weird list of 2 Hall of Famers in Deshae Townsend. And then I'd go a little more old school here. Frank Lewis, the receiver in the 70s. And he's a guy that probably got to Pittsburgh just a bit too early, as the quarterback situation was still bumpy, as Bradshaw was drafted and kind of worked through his struggles the first couple of years where they rotated with him and Hanratty and Joe Gilliam. And then, they draft Swan and Stallworth. Those guys kind of take over. But Lewis, man, had just incredible speed. He was a big play kind of guy. Once he went to, I think it was Buffalo, he had the best year of his career. So that's a guy that made a lot of plays in those early 70s. You forget about him because obviously the focus goes on Terry and Franco and Swan and Stallworth.
Yeah. What about Tunch Ilkin too? Sure. Everybody obviously knows that name and all, but you want to talk about a guy that was, you want to talk about position flexibility and versatility on an offensive line. Back when he played, he moved up and down the offensive line. Obviously wasn't. How many did Tunch ever make a Pro Bowl or anything like that?
I can check. I don't believe so. Probably should have a couple of those years.
Yeah.
But let me check. Oh, no, he did. 2-time Pro Bowler.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to see him recognized for that, because he certainly was versatile, playing up and down that offensive line, for the Steelers.
Yeah, and you talk about just the best tackles at large, left or right. He's up there. Again, franchise history, it's not like a guard and center where you have a lot stronger names throughout the Steelers' history. A tackle, some of the best tackles are, again, Marvel Smith, John Kolb, Tunch Ilkin. Those are some of the top guys.
I mean, when you talk about, I got his PFR page pulled up now. Tunch played 176 games for the Steelers. Started 143 of them. I mean, you'd be, hard pressed to find, how many Steelers have played over 175 games in their career.
It's a relatively short list and not bad for a 6th-round pick from Indiana State. And I remember in his book that whenever Chuck Noll called him and said they were drafting him, or whenever Noll first talked to him, his mission was to try to become a long snapper, because they had Mike Webster doing snaps. They wanted to take Webby off running down, punts. And that was Ilkin's kind of path to try to making the team, and obviously became so much more than that.
All right. We went way off the pre-production meeting this morning, didn't we?
We did. All right, Dave, let's get us back on track here. everybody pays attention when Vince Williams tweets. He doesn't tweet too often, but whenever he says something, I think Steeler fans and you and I take notice. And he made a comment because the Pittsburgh Maulers played in the USFL title game this weekend, lost it, unfortunately, to Birmingham. But Reuben Foster, the former first-round pick who's getting back into professional football with the Maulers this year, had a good game, had a good season, and Vince Williams tweeting that he thinks Pittsburgh will end up signing him, going to the other Pittsburgh team, the Maulers, to the Steelers. And so I know you wrote about that and kind of gave your thoughts. I had a terrible take yesterday with my thoughts on Reuben Foster in the NFL, in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. Kind of give me your lowdown there.
I mean, I think it's definitely plausible for obvious reasons. I think it's easy to connect the dots. I mean, draft pedigree. The Steelers have never been shy about developmental league guys, and obviously, he checks a lot of boxes when it comes to things that the Steelers kind of look for when getting these guys out of the developmental league, and being obviously playing for the Maulers and Ray Horton. It's going to be easy to kind of envision that kind of stuff happen. I watched a handful of Maulers games, obviously this past season, bits and pieces more so than kind of complete games there. I just kind of wonder if he's more of what they already have right now, more of the downhill guy as opposed to, now he can turn and run a little bit in coverage, but even so, I don't view him as kind of a premier coverage Mac, kind of linebacker. Now, is he better than kind of some of the bottom end of the depth chart that they have at that position right now? And boy, you want to talk about a room that's been turned over. In Chappelle, Russell at the bottom of that kind of depth chart, if you will. So if you wanted to do a 1-for-1 replacement, I would think a guy like Russell would be out the door to sign him. It wouldn't be for anything more than the minimum, and he would be coming in kind of behind the 8 ball, having already missed mandatory minicamp and the OTAs and all like that. But I mean, if you're looking for another body that's got NFL experience and has some pedigree to them, I mean, it's plausible. I'll leave it at that. I don't think it's going to happen, but within that, I wouldn't be shocked.
I'll eat my words here if I'm wrong. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, I think Foster has a shot to get into a camp, to get back into the NFL based off the season that he had. But I think for Pittsburgh, they've added already so many veteran inside linebackers. You add another, really, what's his purpose? What's his role? You've really, as you said, turned over that room already. And then B, I think more importantly, you still have some of those character off-field concerns. This is a guy that got kicked out of the combine, failed the drug test there. He's been arrested. He's been suspended. He's had some injuries too, including a terrible knee injury in, forget what year that was, 2019, I want to say. Now, it seems like he's recovered from that, but he's going to be, 30 here, I think, maybe next year, but he's 29 right now, and with, a fairly lengthy injury history and the character stuff. And Pittsburgh just doesn't sign guys with the character concerns. I mean, recently, in the last couple of years, or even, under Omar Khan, every guy they've touched, free agency, trade, draft, they're all squeaky clean with their backgrounds. And I just don't think that's going to be the guy that Pittsburgh's going to go after.
And even if they did, you're talking about a bottom of the depth chart kind of guy battling for a spot. He'd obviously have to excel on special teams, right?
Right.
And how much of that's in his resume?
I doubt much. I can try to check. Obviously, I don't think he was doing it a lot at Alabama, and probably not early in the NFL. But I mean, his NFL resume is pretty light to begin with. He's played 20 career snaps on special teams,
right,
in the NFL.
I mean, that's going to be the primary way he'd have to make the roster, at least initially.
Sure. I just, again, for all those reasons, and primarily the character, the background. I mean, what guy did Pittsburgh add this offseason in Omar Khan's first full offseason that had any hint of any whiff of a character or off-field concern? I can't think of one.
Yeah, good point.
So I just don't. I think Foster may go somewhere. I think to your point, because these guys have missed OTAs and mini camp, and they're coming in late for training camp, that puts them all behind the 8 ball. I think that makes the XFL guys more attractive because you can get them for your spring workouts as opposed to the USFL season that ends much later, right around this time. But some of those guys will float into the NFL.
Yeah, look, I think we both agree he's probably going to end up on a training camp roster. We just don't think I don't like the chances of it being the Steelers.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I'm going to disagree with Vince Williams and say I don't think that prediction is going to come true. All right, Dave, one last thing to note here before we get into your 90 and 30 series. I've been trying to brainstorm some articles to write. And when I do that, I said on a recent podcast, I go to Pro Football Reference. I stare at the page for a little bit. I also stare at the Steelers front office page and cross my fingers for changes that they put up a name that no one's seen yet, but that has not happened so far. But had an idea yesterday. I wanted to examine, how much has Omar Khan grown the scouting staff since taking over? And pretty significantly. Under Kevin Colbert, whenever he left, there were 15 guys in the scouting department. Now there's 21. That's a 40% increase. And so you've seen, I think, a bit more of a delegation and specification in terms of some of these roles. And I don't know, I should have counted if there were more area scouts. Now, I didn't actually do that, but overall, the scouting staff has gotten larger. Now, I think it's on the Steelers site, it shows only 19, but if you add in Ike Taylor and Merrill Hodge, you kind of are in assistant scouting roles, a bit more position specific, it seems, then I get to 21 that way. So I think that's probably one subtle but notable change that Omar Khan has made.
All right. What's your main takeaway from that?
Nothing inherently good or bad.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to sit there and say that, you have to have the largest scouting staff in the world. It kind of goes back to the head coach discussion. It's more about the people and the quality of their work. And there are benefits to having a smaller and tighter, scouting group of people. But I think when it comes to scouting, it's just, there's so much work to be done when you're sifting through literally thousands of prospects and trying to whittle them down to the 7 guys that you're going to draft. The more people that you can have to help with the delegation and being able to kind of, with a fine-tooth comb go through some of these names, I think it's really important to have, just because of the monumental task that scouting is and how constant and 24/7 that it presents. So I think, generally speaking, having a larger scouting staff, as long as they're quality people, of course, is probably for the best.
Is there any other new additions that kind of have you intrigued?
In terms of the ones they've hired this year, when you say new additions? I mean, well, it was a lot of area scouts that were kind of just filling some of the gaps in terms of, with Mark Gorsick leaving the team, and they never replaced Rick Rapricious, really Southeast region. I mean, obviously, a guy like Zach Crockett, but just because he has that football background is an interesting name. And I think Jim Ward's a guy that's from Philadelphia, so there's a lot of ties there to Weidl, and now he's in Pittsburgh. But, just interesting to see this team kind of fill out the area scouts. All right, Dave, we can go over to your 90 and 30 series. We left off with, I think it was Mason Cole, Dylan Cook, and James Daniels. So we can move on to Duke Dawson, Kevin Dotson, and my favorite name on the roster, William Bill Dunkel. That's my favorite name.
All right. Duke Dawson, a guy that kind of back into news based on some things I think Terrell Austin maybe had said a couple of weeks ago, mandatory mini camp and all. A guy that's not really a stranger to the NFL, was a second round draft pick in 2018 of the Patriots. Has played 26 regular season games, 400. It felt like he had played more snaps than that, but just 414 defensive snaps overall. He figures to get a fair shot at competing for a 53-man roster spot, probably more so as a slot cornerback. Once again, he was one of those names, along with Chandon Sullivan that Austin highlighted there. So going to be interesting to see if maybe he can I guess the proper verb or adjective would be Mike Hilton this thing.
Yeah, he's kind of got that backstory. Well, in the sense of practice squad and trying to move up. He's got pedigree. He was a former second-round pick of the Patriots, never played a down for them, got traded to Denver, and his last NFL snap came in 2020. But you're right. I think Terrell Austin mentioned him. Omar Khan mentioned him early in the offseason about potential slot candidates, and it's wide open there right now. So, do I think Duke Dawson's going to be the guy? Probably not. But if they want to break this thing up into a rundown slot corner and a pass down slot corner, the way that they did the last 2 years with Arthur Millette being the rundown guy and Cam Sutton being the pass down guy, Dawson could be that Millette because he's pretty feisty, he's pretty aggressive, and kind of has that Mike Hilton type of feel. So, he's not played football in a game that counts in quite some time, but somebody to watch and somebody that could be a sleeper.
Yeah, look, he's logged a few special team snaps along the way. He's kind of put together nicely, I think, overall for a guy his size. And what was the other note that I had on him? Limited 182 more special teams snaps so far in his career, and just going to be an interesting guy to. And look, he's been in the organization since October of last year as a member of the practice squad. So this isn't new to him. They obviously like him enough to keep him around from the middle of last year on there. So going to be a guy interesting to watch do battle this summer in training camp.
And I'll just say this final point. I think it's always good for these guys once they have a full off season with the team. They're going through the process from start to finish, where you're not coming in October, your practice squad, you're just trying to catch that moving train, where you're coming in fresh, you're there through the winter workouts in the weight room, then you're going through, your voluntary mini camp, your mandatory mini camp, and then going through training camp from the start. So for all of those guys that are new to Pittsburgh, to have that full offseason, I think really pays off in a pretty big way.
All right. Next on the list, Kevin Dotson, and what's left to be said about Kevin Dotson at this point. He's slated to earn $2.743 million this coming season due to the proven performance escalator process and all. He's a guy that now appears to have lost his, the Steelers have heavily addressed this offensive line during the offseason, specifically, at the guard position overall. Dotson, the way he kind of worded some things so far this offseason, it feels like he's very resigned to the fact that not only has he lost his spot, that there's a potential that he might be elsewhere come week one of the season. At this point of the offseason, the way injuries could happen, it's probably not wise to trade him right now, unless somebody just blew your mind with some sort of offer, and I can't see that happening right now. But the closer that you get to week one, and if the bulk of this offensive line, specifically at the guard position, stays healthy, it makes you kind of wonder, would he wind up being traded? Now, if he's not traded, you got to like his chances of sticking on the 53, I think. But I think the biggest question with him is, if he's not on the Steelers 53-man roster, will that be a result of him being traded to another team?
Yeah, he's going to be Pittsburgh's prime trade candidate this summer. And the second that any other NFL team has an offensive line injury, and that's going to happen in short order, I imagine, you're going to get the conversation that you and I have, or someone's writing about, should Kevin Dotson go to the Lions because they just lost whoever, that kind of thing. So as you said, you're going to hold on to Dotson for a while, make sure your own offensive line stays healthy. You don't want to trade him before camp starts and you lose 3 linemen in that first 2 weeks and you kind of regret that trade. So you want to go through, evaluate your guys, make sure you're comfortable with what you have, and then you can deal Dotson close to that cut down deadline. But yeah, if he's not traded, does he stay? Guess what would his role be at that point if he stays, or if he's not traded?
Yeah, probably a swing guard, right?
Oh, isn't it Nate Herbig, the swing guard?
Yeah. But you got to have inactives, right?
Sure.
I guess it comes down to how many offensive linemen are they going to keep on this 53-man roster? 8, 9, or 10?
But then in terms of Yeah, the actives, I mean, you're going to dress probably 7, right? So you have your starting 5. Herbig is going to be 6. And then probably somebody that can play some more center.
Don't you have to dress
Or is it
8
8?
to take advantage of
Yeah, the extra spot.
expanded roster?
Yeah, okay. So let's say it's 8 then. Okay, you're starting 5, a backup tackle. Let's call it just Dan Moore for simplicity's sake right now. Backup guard, Nate Herbig. And then you probably want somebody that can play some better center for you.
Right.
So there's your 8.
Right. And Dotson, as far as we know, still doesn't have any center experience, So.
Yeah, nothing in game. So, and you could make him inactive. He's pretty expensive, but he could be just super quality depth for you. He won't be happy about it, but you'll have to get over it.
And 2.743 million is pretty expensive to be a regular game day inactive.
Right. So I think obviously you're going to look for a trade possibility. What do you think his worth is if you had to guess? And it's a little harder to say because if a team's a bit more desperate because they just lost an offensive lineman, they may be willing to pay a bit more, but
fifth or sixth fifth at most. I would think, and more than likely maybe a 6th.
That's true. I probably 6. I think we all tend to overvalue our own players a little bit. So 6th rounder sounds about right.
One of the most concerning things on him so far, especially last year, was the penalty count on him. A team high 12 penalties,
Yeah, there were some drive killers for sure. And it wasn't all on him, but and I know some of those were the ineligible man downfield, and some of those to me were a little ticky-tack. Some of them I thought were more egregious on Dotson's end. Again, I said this mid-season, he's the most frustrating player to watch on this roster, not because he's a bad player. If he was bad, you wouldn't be frustrated by that. You just would accept that he's not good enough. He's shown talent. He's shown flashes. There's been moments in time you sit there and say, this is an NFL starting caliber type of guard, but I think he's so inconsistent. I think above the neck, there are so many issues. Even in terms of just trying to follow some of Pat Meyer's rules, I think they kind of simplified some things and didn't ask him to help the tackles as much as I think Meyer's system is designed to do. And there were just some really ugly moments, especially in pass pro last year for him.
All right, William Dunkel, next one on the list here. And I think one of the things that sticks out the most about William Dunkel is he was, practice squad player last year, and he managed to stay on the Steelers practice squad throughout the 2022 season. And in today's NFL, that's a pretty big accomplishment, I think, overall. So there's something there that they like about him. Even so, he failed, obviously, to make the 53-man roster at any point. Now, primarily because, knock on wood, Steelers offensive line stayed healthy as a whole last offseason there. Of the 43 preseason snaps that Dunkel played as a rookie in 2022, all of them came at right guard, which was his primary position in college. When you look at his 53-man roster chances this summer, they're not great, right? It really feels like a lot would have to happen for Dunkel to make the 53-man roster. It will be interesting, I think, to see, assuming he sticks on the roster come preseason game time, does he get snaps at only right guard, or does he mix in some left guard in there to kind of show some of that position flexibility? But I think when you boil all this down, when it comes to William Dunkel, his best shot at staying in Pittsburgh past the preseason would be as a practice squad player again.
Right. I'm with you. He was part of that training camp shuffle that Pittsburgh did midway through camp last year, where they got rid of a lot of their third string offensive linemen and brought guys in like Bill Dunkel, like Ryan McCollum. And to see those guys stick, as you said, says something about their practice habits and work ethic and attention to detail and those types of things. So I can't even remember a takeaway from Dunkel's preseason action last year in Pittsburgh. It was so limited, but we'll get eyes on him in camp again. Another one of those guys that's coming in, having the full offseason experience will make him better to start the summer, hopefully on a strong note.
All right. Next on the list, Braden Fehoko, who the Steelers added this past offseason on a 1-year contract, former member of the Chargers. This guy, the deeper you get into his bio and character and just everything that comes with him, I mean, he's I don't want to say, because he doesn't have the pedigree, but you kind of get the Tyson Alualu vibes a little bit with him. Just a super likable guy when you dig deeper into his bio with him. This is a guy that's obviously best suited to play between the B gaps, more specifically a 1 or a 0 technique there. You obviously saw this team go out and get Keanu Benton in the draft here. I think the big thing here is can he win a roster spot to either open the season as the starting nose tackle, or at least be a backup dress player on that defensive line.
It's funny you mentioned Tyson Alualu. I think there was an article on Steelers.com. There's some connection there between Alualu and Fehoko. I think Alualu had played against his brothers, and he reached out to Fehoko whenever he signed, and so there's some cool connections there. Those Hawaii born and based guys. I think Fehoko, he's your classic interior plugger. He's a 3-4 zero tech shade, and that's really all he is. He's not going to play up and down the line, but he can stuff the run, and that's kind of his job. That's his MO. He's a very old school type of guy that ideally is a backup. I don't think he's going to give you enough there to give you the starting snaps. Hopefully Keanu Benton can be this team's starting nose tackle, but there's a chance there for him to be that guy as a backup.
Yeah, look, his first and foremost job or goal should be to make Montravius Adams expendable.
Right. Yeah, I think if you can save a bit of money by cutting Adams and having Fehoko be that backup nose tackle, you add in Armand Watts, who's got a background there. Those are going to be your guys.
Right. I mean, but overall, once again, I think he's a fun guy to learn about so far this offseason. And it will be interesting to actually see him in the Steelers uniform once camp and the preseason gets underway. All right, next on the list, wide receiver Dez Fitzpatrick, after being selected in the 4th round by the Titans out of Louisville. He had a very, if you go back and look at statistically and some of his tape, had a very consistent college career at Louisville, but nothing over the top. Because he had what in total, let's see, I don't think I have his total stats in front of me here, but he's logged just 104 offensive snaps since being drafted and 9 more on special teams. That's a deterrent to right off the bat there, because he had just 5 total receptions for 49 yards on 8 targets in 2021. Most of his 2 NFL seasons have been spent on the practice squad of the Titans. The Steelers signed him to reserve future contract back in January there. Mid-round draft pedigree. I think at this point it was kind of apparent that he was maybe overdrafted initially. With him not having much in the way of special teams on his resume to this point, that's going to me, kind of hurt, his cause there, especially when you look at the bottom end of the wide receiver depth chart. So it really feels like when, probably a guy probably going to make a play or two during training camp in the preseason there. But, push come to shove here, it really feels like he's battling for a practice squad spot this summer.
He is. The receiver room is just too crowded. Again, I think the top 5 are basically locked in, and then number 6 is going to be either nobody or Hakeem Butler, or maybe with a smaller chance, Gunnar Olszewski stays around for his return value. So, yeah, Fitzpatrick has some size. He does have some NFL experience, and that's going to help him this summer, but it is practice squad at best.
All right, another Fitzpatrick guy. Perhaps you've heard of him, Minkah Fitzpatrick. I watched a little bit of tape on this guy. He's pretty good, Alex. First team All-Pro and Pro Bowl selection again last season. There's not a lot to talk about when it comes to Minkah. I think the only thing is when you look at his outlook for 2023, you once again are expecting another All-Pro Pro Bowl season. I'd like to see him, hit 4 more interceptions in 2023. I'd like to see him roam around even more and rotate even more into some of that robber type situation there. The best Minkah Fitzpatrick becomes, it's not like he's not a good player when he's tied to the post only as a free safety, but Minkah Fitzpatrick becomes even a better player when you don't know where he is on the field.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Pittsburgh is able to rotate and spin him with some of these new pieces. Again, I think that's where the value that Cam Sutton really brought last year, because he was so versatile. He could line up literally everywhere, whether he was rotating into the deep half, rotating into the post, cover two, middle hole guy, carrying the seam. I mean, he did it all, and that really allowed, because like Minkah is flexible, but for him to be flexible, somebody else has to be just as flexible to make both guys work. You can't just have one guy be flexible, the other guy be static and think it's going to work. So there's some concern there, but there's no concern about Minkah Fitzpatrick, the player himself, his professionalism, his tape study, his work ethic. And again, I think while we focus on the gaudy highlights of the interceptions, the big plays, the clutch moments, which Minkah certainly excels at, his tackling, he's among the best tackling safeties in football. His open field ability is really strong in terms of his technique, his strength, coming to balance, shooting, and being able to finish. And so I think what gets lost in all those big plays is that consistent, steady Eddie, make the tackle, don't allow that good run to become a great run. He's really good in the alley as a tackler.
Within all that, though, both of us agree we don't want to see Minkah Fitzpatrick have to tally 100 tackles again, right?
Yeah, like 2 years ago. Yeah, and his numbers came down last year, both total tackles and I think I did the study recently on tackles of 20-plus yards. He led the NFL 2 years ago. Last year, he was more, I think, 10th or 11th, which felt more in range of where he should be, hopefully even a little bit lower than that come 2023. But certainly you don't want to see him make a ton of them, but he's capable of doing it. And that's always, so valuable to have, is that last line of defense.
All right. Next on the list in the 90 and 30, Pat Freiermuth. And there's really not a lot to discuss about here. One of the things we talked about Pat Freiermuth a year ago, we wanted to see that average yards per reception go up. That happened. That was good to see. I don't know as far as the blocking goes overall. I think, this being his third season, maybe there's a little ceiling left in him when it comes to that. I'm not expecting a huge jump when it comes to Pat Freiermuth and his in-line blocking. He's great out in space and has been since day one. Just would like to see him improve a little bit as an inline blocker. I mean, this is a guy now that 2 seasons in a row, 60-plus receptions, joining only Keith Jackson as the only tight end, 2 tight ends in NFL history to record 60-plus receptions in each of their first 2 seasons. Expect him to have another 60-plus receptions in 2023, and hopefully more than 700 yards and hopefully more than 2 touchdowns. I'd like to see him get back in that 6, 7, 8, 9 touchdown range. Definitely has the ability to do that, specifically in this offense. He managed to log 743 offensive snaps last season. That feels about right for 2023, right? I mean, maybe 800 total offensive snaps. Has had another interesting fact with him, or maybe a minor concern, is he's had a couple of concussions so far. Hopefully he has none of those moving forward into 2023. And he attended tight end university this offseason, so it'll be interesting to see if things that maybe he picked up as part of that offseason process manifest themselves into his play on the field.
And I know he's been dealing with some sort of injury that hopefully is not going to limit him much, if at all, for training camp. So that's one thing to watch. Hopefully he's not a surprise pup guy to start the year. That's going to be for, not that it's a long-term concern, but just, out for a week, something like that. Yeah, as a blocker, as you mentioned, I think he basically is what he is. There could be a little bit more meat left on that bone. I don't think he likes blocking that much. I think he's excited about Darnell Washington as much as anybody, because he feels like he can now run more routes, don't have to block as much. Which I don't know if that's really 100% true, but that's kind of what he's talked about. Can he get the 60 receptions again? Because he's been really close. He was at He's been at 60 and 63 his first 2 seasons. If that slot role grows more this year with Robinson and Austin, you think that it will. and this team obviously going to run the ball, hopefully a lot. Do you think he'll do it?
I think 60's within his reach. Yeah.
It's within his reach for sure, but he might be at like 57 because he's been really close and he's had the concussions, like you said, missed some time. I think it's going to be a race to the finish.
Okay. I mean, I agree it's going to be close. I expect him to hit at least 60.
Okay. Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, as a security blanket, his understanding of leverage, I think he was quicker upfield post catch last year. I think he was better than where he was as a rookie. Pittsburgh smartly used him more vertically down the field. He's good in scramble drills, which, Kenny Pickett, remember that throw against Baltimore in that game-winning drive, getting open and firing a perfect pass to Freiermuth. The hands are off the charts. So, yeah, should be another solid season from Pat Freiermuth.
All right. One guy that won't have 60 receptions in 2023, another tight end, Zach Gentry. A lot of, especially on the heels of Darnell Washington being drafted and all like that. It's going to be interesting to watch how the impact of Washington and his arrival in Pittsburgh and how it impacts a guy like Zach Gentry. And, you talk about, we earlier in the show, we talked about guys like Matt Spaeth, who was a huge tight end overall, who was a very good run blocker. Zach Gentry has not developed into the kind of run blocker that I think the Steelers hoped would be the case. In fact, I kind of view him kind of taking a minor step backwards in that phase of his game last season here, and not a guy that's going to obviously catch a lot of passes for you. And assuming the Steelers want to play this bully ball that we think they're going to want to play, and obviously having Darnell Washington now in that tight end room. What's going to be the impact as far as, especially if they use two tight end groupings, how much will Darnell start eating into that? How soon? And what will the overall impact be on Gentry? And could there be games where Zach Gentry doesn't get a helmet, because of this? Because, make no mistake about it, Gentry's not a special teams demon on top of it either. So you don't lose anything, I don't think, overall, by not having him dressed for games should you go that route.
Sure. I think the impact that Washington has on Gentry is significant, where there's no guarantee Gentry makes this team. I mean, you can argue that. And
I caught hell for that back earlier.
Did you really?
Off season. Yeah.
Even after they drafted Washington?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know specifically before they drafted Washington, but I kind of had inferred that, because remember all the talk we had about the Michigan tight end and because, obviously not a lot of people like the Steelers' chances of getting Washington specifically where they got him and all. But, the moment that he re-signed, I kind of wondered if Gentry's roster spot wasn't guaranteed.
Because that contract is the minimum.
It's cheap. Yeah. It is cheap. There's not a lot of guaranteed money tied to it. So here we are in the early part of July. And I mean, we both agree, right? That, I mean, should people be writing Zach Gentry's name in pen when it comes to a 53-man roster?
No, they shouldn't. Now, I think
I like his chances, but still.
Yeah, I think they're better than 50%. If you carry 4 total tight ends, fullbacks, Hayward effectively replaces Derek Watt in that slot. I don't think he's going to be an every down kind of fullback, but he can kind of replace what Derek Watt was doing. Then you have your 3 kind of true tight ends in Freiermuth, Washington, Gentry. That's his path to make it, but it's not guaranteed. And certainly in terms of a playing time, getting a helmet standpoint, Gentry may be inactive for large portions of this season. I think Washington's going to play out of the gate, barring him looking miserable this summer. And as you said, Gentry really offers nothing on special teams outside of a wing on the field goal protect team. That's about it. Washington can do that. So, yeah, it's going to be a big step back for Zach Gentry in 2023 if he makes the team.
Right. And one of the things I'm looking for when it comes to him this summer from you and the training camp reports and block his ass off, man.
Yeah, it's like 2 years ago where he was up against it, trying to fight Kevin Rader for a practice or for that final tight end spot. And he had a good summer and he got a lot better as a run blocker and he made the team. And played heavy snaps because of it, but they brought in a bigger, better, well, I shouldn't say bigger, but a better version of Zach Gentry and Darnell Washington, a guy that hopefully can be a really good blocker and offer a lot more in the pass game.
All right, true or false? If Gentry makes the 53-man roster, he will be inactive for at least 4 games in 2023.
True. I think easily true on that one.
Okay. I'm with you. I'm true on that as well too. And once again, I don't think you write his name in pen right now. All right. Marcus Golden, boy, nice to have a veteran outside linebacker on this roster right now. And I think when you kind of draw them up as far as what the Steelers are willing to spend for and experience, I think Marcus Golden is a wise choice here, and I think it plays right into his wheelhouse to be that kind of rotational guy to come in and spell Alex Highsmith and T.J. Watt there. You obviously don't have any special teams aspect related to him, especially at his age. But for a guy his age to try to extend his career, a guy that I think can be comfortable in that role as opposed to what the team went through with Melvin Ingram a couple of seasons ago there. This really feels like a solid fit, has the connections to Denzel Martin, obviously. So, guy that we both expect to make the 53-man roster and serve as that next guy in behind Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt.
Yeah, I think it's a really good fit overall. The experience, the well-roundedness of his game in terms of run defense, pass rush numbers a bit down last year, but sacks can be a little bit fickle. The motor runs hot. He can play both sides. It's a really solid scheme fit overall. As long as he just accepts his role, which will be as reduced as it has been in any seasons he's played in since early in his career. As long as he's okay with that and knows his role and knows his purpose and doesn't want to, get out the way that Melvin Ingram did, then things should be good. But it's a really good rotational player and solid protection against an injury, which unfortunately has been happening the last couple of years with these starting outside linebackers.
Look, when he's on the field, we want to see that run game defense of his stay where it's been what it looks like on tape last couple seasons there. And as far as pass production goes, sometimes you're going to get those sacks, sometimes you're not. I think overall the pressures haven't been bad for him. And want to see him, just stay healthy and kind of productive in all areas. Now, at some point he's going to drop off, but also within that, I think if you kind of keep him, you're not going to ask him hopefully to go out there and play 700-800 snaps, in a season. So if you can keep him on kind of a fairly predictive routine as far as rotational usage, I think he should be fine. Double-digit sacks aren't out of the question, or not double-digit. Double-digit sacks are out of the question, but I think half a dozen sacks for him in 2023 aren't out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, you figure somebody's going to get hurt or nicked up. There's going to be times where hope he's playing, a lot more snaps over, a couple weeks span. So I don't have a specific number. I think 6 sacks, not out of the question. You're right, but probably on the optimistic side of things. But a 3.5 sack season with quality pressure, good run defense, I'm good with that.
All right, next up, Alfonso Graham. Was not one of these Steelers' initial undrafted free agents, but joined not too long after the rookie minicamp, and he got a contract after that. Morgan State product. The biggest thing when it comes to a guy like him that really sticks out is his size factor. 5'8", 7/8", 185 pounds. Put up some nice numbers, obviously, at Morgan State in a couple seasons there. But man, when you're talking about third running backs on this roster, you can't talk about them without them maybe being able to contribute on special teams, and it just does not feel like that's going to be his forte when it comes to that. So I think realistically, when you look at Graham, he'd be doing well to snag a week 1 spot on the Steelers practice squad.
I might have a different take. I think he's a sleeper to be that number 3 guy. Now, the size is atypical for what Pittsburgh generally likes. They want the bigger, sturdier type of back. Benny Snell, that number 3 runner last year. But Graham has a special teams background. When I talked to him, he played gunner. I mean, he's a guy that could just run down kicks and punts before. And so he's a smaller type to do, but I think he has the the 1-2, the buy-in, the right attitude to go out there and do that. He can make plays in the pass game. He's obviously a pretty explosive runner. Has to show he can run between the tackles, not be like, Mateo Durant last year, got all the buzz for his speed and loses out because there was no power. And Warren was that power guy that could anchor in pass protection and also play on special teams. But I think Graham is a hard worker, earning that contract as a tryout guy says a lot about what Pittsburgh thought of him. And not that he's guaranteed anything. It's a real wide open battle for that third running back position, but Graham has a shot.
He's going to have to special teams his 5'9", 185-pound butt off.
Yeah, but I mean, who's his competition right now? McFarland, who has not done it, cannot do it. And the guy we'll talk about here in a second, and Darius Higgins, who has a shot too, but he's a rookie just like Graham.
All right, I think he'll be doing well to snag. My view on after watching him is he'll be doing well to snag a week 1 practice squad spot. Kendrick Green next up on the list. Boy, have we had some conversations about this kid here, and we talked about what the Steelers backup center situation looks like. Of all the guys that they have on the 90-man roster right now, not counting Mason Cole, he is the most experienced NFL center that they have as far as snaps in the NFL go at the center position. Yeah, James Daniels has had some and all like that, but to me, it feels like it's backup center or bust for Kendrick Green this summer.
I think you're right. Now the question is, what's the competition like? Who will who will beat him out? If it's not Kendrick Green, how can Kendrick Green improve? Just in terms of
stay on
punch.
his feet first and foremost.
I think I did get better, and I think in camp last year with that, but you want to continue that improvement, no doubt. But yeah, I think just having that first significant contact that Pat Meyer teaches, being in control of these blocks, is pretty. I think the center spot has to do a lot under Meyer's system, even more than just snapping the football and line calls. But he's working 1v1 more than a lot of other systems where the guards give more help. The guards will help out the tackles more under Pat Meyer. So it's going to ask more out of Kendrick Green, but we'll see. It's his last chance.
Man, it's very alarming. He didn't even dress for a game in 2022.
And now granted, the line was extremely healthy. I mean, had there been typical injuries, he probably would have dressed at some point.
You obviously J.C. Hassenauer was the backup center to Cole last season, and this team even chose to dress a more versatile washout Jesse Davis over a guy like Green. Who,
Did the Steelers make a mistake by not tendering J.C. Hassenauer and kind of putting him in this
it sort of feels
position?
like it right now. Maybe they thought he'd come crawling back for the minimum value. Is J.C. Hassenauer a lock to make? Where's he? The Giants?
Yes, he's in New York. Yep.
Could we potentially see J.C. circle back? If he doesn't make the Giants on a minimal contract.
What does the Giants' depth chart look like in terms of their backup offense line? Their tackles, I think, are pretty good. Oh, yeah, they drafted John Michael Schmitz in the second round. He should be their starter. I'm not sure what the backup situation is looking like, though.
All right, so going to be interesting. I got my doubts that Kendrick Green's going to make the 53, and I've had those doubts for a while.
You and me both.
All right, Darius Higgins, running back out of Virginia State, signed to the offseason 90-man roster in early June. Follow him being waived by the Colts. When you compare him to a guy such as Alfonso Graham, he looks more like that kind of third running back, or at least built for a little bit more special teams action. There overall, he's going to have a shot, I think. And I think that the question really becomes at that running back depth chart is, does this team add to that room with a more experienced guy moving forward into the summer? If they don't, I think Higgins could be in play more so than a guy like Graham to snag that third spot.
That's fair. I like both these undrafted rookie running backs in Graham and Higgins. I think that third running back spot, while it's not going to mean as much as, say, the left tackle battle, it's going to be one of the most intense and fun competitions to watch this summer. And you're right. I thought Hagen's had good tape. Now it's lower competition, obviously, but he does have power. He's got speed. He has special teams value and ability as well. And so he does have that look and that profile of a third running back in Pittsburgh, more so than Graham. I'm 100% with you there. But, let these guys compete and see what happens in camp. But I think Hagen's is a name to watch as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, that is the 90 and 30 catch up. Who's next? I think another running back is going to be on that list soon, and Jason Huntley. We don't talk about him too much. Right. Who's up next as well?
Haven't even looked. I got to start writing that up this afternoon, and it looks like the next three names on the list will be. Where do we leave off? Hey, okay, Madre Harper, some guy named Najee Harris, and Presley Harvin III.
Okay. All right, so we'll talk about that and others when we come back on Friday. Any other Steelers things that we're missing that you wanted to mention today, Dave?
I think we've pretty much covered everything we wanted to get to, right?
Right. Any reader emails to close out today's show?
All right, let's Deshaun Campbell. What's up, guys? Happy 4th of July. I'm hoping you can help me understand the NFL new handoff rule. Seems to me if you hand the ball forward, it is deemed illegal, which means it gets rid of read options and jet sweeps, correct? A rule change like this would affect, I don't know what he's talking about here. Do you know?
I'm not sure if the NFL, you can't lateral because that happened in the USFL, right? When that defense lineman was running downfield and gave the ball forward. You can still run read options. I mean, those are just passes if the ball is flipped forward.
I think specifically the rule says now a forward handoff is illegal if it's to an ineligible player or beyond the line of scrimmage. The rule makes language more consistent with similar rules, blah, blah, blah. So, obviously a running back is ineligible. Let me see if I can find.
Whatever the rule is, I'm sure these plays are all still legal. I'm not entirely sure of the verbiage here, but read options are typically backwards, not even forward, and jet sweeps, you can hand that ball off.
Right. So I Deshaun, I think maybe you have a misunderstanding there because you can obviously hand the ball off forward, a quarterback reach out ahead of him and hand the ball off to a running back or to a wide receiver on a jet sweep. I think the key factor is it's got to be an eligible player.
Yeah, heck, on a lot of these jet sweeps, I don't know if it happens as much in Pittsburgh, but they're actually kind of flipping it forward as these kind of little passes. And so what that does is it eliminates the risk of a fumble, because if you literally hand the ball off on a jet sweep, let's say the guy's coming in front of you and it falls to the ground, it's a fumble. If you pass it, if you kind of toss it, and it falls incomplete, the guy drops it, it's an incompletion. And so there's kind of a workaround there. So, but anyway, the rules are not going to eliminate any of those things.
Let's see. Ramon Garcia. Ramon here from Mexico. Consider this scenario. Steelers get a wild card spot this year, win one playoff game, and get blown out by Kansas City in the divisional round. Pickett progresses fine. Let's say 25 TDs, 10 interceptions. Top 5 defense ranked 15th-ish over top 5 defense ranked 15th-ish on offense. Would you consider this a successful season? He says, I think all of it's plausible. What worries me, a good enough Pickett a la Kirk Cousins, but not elite Pickett, can get us to winning a Super Bowl. Can he get us to winning a Super Bowl in the next 3 to 5 years? What would you like to see team do in case the ceiling of Pickett is to be a second-tier quarterback level? Back in the days, defense won championships. It's harder and harder to do so now without a top-notch top 5 franchise quarterback, which I struggle to see Pickett with. Boy, there's a lot to chew on there, Ramon there. I will just say this about the Steelers 2023 season. I think you're going to be able to smell it, touch it, taste it, all aspects of it, not only statistically, but with your eyes and the tape. For this team to make any noise in 2023, as Matt Canada would say, we got to score more points for starters. I'd like to see that go up over 20, obviously. getting that 21, 22 at least points per game process. I've talked about Pickett and the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Obviously I think that's got to get up over 6, probably closer to the 7 side if we're talking successful season. Top 8 defense seems absolutely necessary, it feels like here. Alex will point to a lot of the situational football aspects of this team offensively. How are they on third down? Are they staying out of third and long situations? What is the first down successful play rate play percentage look like in this offense? Red zone. Red zone. Explosive plays is something we've hit on quite a bit, for obvious reasons here. I think the way kind of, Ramon, that you've worded this thing here, I mean, you have so many different aspects here, and worrying about right now is if Pickett is Kirk Cousins or not, or next 3 years Super Bowl. Let's watch 2023 first, man. Let's see, look, when it comes to Pickett, and I've said this, since last season, really with any rookie quarterback overall, I want to see what these kids look like after 20 NFL games are played. And obviously we should know that, talk about Pickett specifically, through the first 6 games of this season. Are we seeing things that has our eyebrows up saying, well, that looks good. I just want to be able to take away offensively the first 6 games of this season saying, yeah, Pickett's progressing. And I think that's something that we'll be able to smell, touch, feel, taste, look at the stats, see it, look at the tape, see it, that aspect of it.
It's a very filling question before I have my 4th of July meal, so I don't want to get a stomach ache here. I'm
not worried about anything past the first 6 games of this season.
Sure.
On all aspects of this team.
Right, but just trying to at least ponder the question. I've had the same concern. I wonder where the ceiling for this team is. I think they're building it so it's going to be competitive, that they're going to always be in the mix, probably get a wild card spot. Can you do anything from there is going to be the ultimate question. So it boils down to, you make the playoffs, you have improvement, you're one and done though, like seasons past. Is that successful for where this team is at? That is the core of the question.
Look, they got to win a playoff. They got to get that monkey off their back, man. I think so. They got to win a playoff game. And look, as we go back to things Pickett has said and done since last season, everything that's happening, at least out of mouths to this point, sounds fantastic. Now we got to see it on the field. I mean, you've got obviously a more experienced offensive unit overall. Pickett knows what to expect. You don't have the combine to worry. You don't have the rookie season stuff to worry about. All the stuff that goes along with that. Enough progress should be there. The point should be up. To me, the expectation should be that this team obviously finished above 500, makes the playoffs, and we got to see a playoff win.
Right. That's what it comes down to. How do you define that as successful? And obviously you want to get back to the playoffs, get there for Kenny Pickett's first time, get there after missing last year. But the model has to show that you can win in the postseason, not just get to the playoffs. And not that that's all going to be defined by what happens in one particular year, but we're taking it, year by year as it comes. And so I think, as you said, to end that drought, break that streak, you got to win a playoff game. And so you'll be encouraged by those signs, even if you are bounced by the Chiefs or whoever in the wild card game, to really feel like you're making true progress. You got to win a playoff game.
Look, it's what was the stat yesterday that floated around from, was it Sam Monson about from week 9 to, what was the stat on
Twitter has been difficult to use, so I probably didn't see it. It was on and off for me all day, but you can look that up because I'm currently locked out essentially of Twitter right now.
Let me see if I can find the stat real quick. And it's very cherry picked. Mm-hmm. Okay, here it is. From week 9 onwards last year, and he says arbitrary cutoffs for the win. Only 2 quarterbacks had a big time throw rate over 5% and a turnover worthy play rate under 2%. Those 2 quarterbacks were Joe Burrow and Kenny Pickett. He goes on to say, I make no point with this random data point other than it surprised me when I stumbled on it. So it's a completely arbitrary random data point, but I will say this. I have it now notated to see what this looks like for a season. First 6 games of the season is a perfect, point. What is his big time? Because look, if you boil down those Kenny Pickett interceptions last season, I mean, how many of them, I don't want to say were acceptable, but how many of them were, I guess, not as much his fault?
A handful, and especially if it's week 9 and on, those interceptions were mostly coming before that point. That was the Steelers bye week, post-bye, week 10 and on. 1 actual interception. That was a pressure play against the Raiders. I don't know how many turnover-worthy ones there were, but not a ton of them. And so he certainly took great care of the football the back half of last year. It's why they went 7-2. Right.
Now, can he keep the turnover-worthy play rate under 2%? And in the process, push the football down the field a little bit more,
We'll see. You hope so. Here's my hot take. I thought Kenny Pickett, in my whole deep dive review, going back and watching every single snap, was probably more successful throwing downfield than he was with the short game last year, believe it or not.
All right. And once again, look, I can cherry pick stats with the best of them. For sure. But I mean, this did kind of catch my eye here as to maybe something to watch when it comes to him. Because look, if he doesn't turn the football over in the first 6 games and this team's able to run the football a little bit, they're going to be in some games.
Oh yeah, and they're going to win some games, not just be in them for sure. Now, the only thing
if the big time throw rate's over 5%, that's not going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow on that list, the Bengals, one of the best teams in the AFC. Now, I will just say is that, and I know that you understand this, and probably most of our listeners do, this thing is not always linear. That's going to just keep going up and up. There's going to be ebbs and flows. You're going to probably have one of those first 6 games be a stinker and just a bad game, and it happens. These things are roller coasters. The NFL season is bumpy and turbulent, and you just hope for more growth as you kind of look at pockets of time, the first quarter of the year compared to the second quarter of the year, third quarter, fourth quarter. And so I still want to throw that caution out there, not to become uber prisoners of the moment and take and try to draw conclusions based off of just one game, good or bad, because there will be ebbs and flow. He's still a 2nd-year guy. It's still quarterback. Most of these guys, aren't immune to having a bad game every now and then. So you just want to put everything into context and in better totality of the season.
I think, and kind of what caught my eye too is just knowing and understanding that from week 9 on last year, the interceptions obviously were down. He did seem to get a little bit more comfortable overall for obvious reasons there. And when you do look at the interceptions that he did have prior to week 9, I don't want to say explainable, but a few of them probably shouldn't have happened, and not by his fault.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, the first pass he threw to Claypool. I mean, that's him trying to make a play, but who was the first player to have his hands on that football?
Yeah, it was Claypool.
Right. You pay guys to come down with footballs in 50-50 situations like that.
Right,
which was really more of a 60-40, really, when you look at Claypool and that first throw there. Look, I'm not. None of this is me trying to paint Kenny Pickett either way. I do this tweet and this stat though did get me thinking of something to at least add to my list of statistical evaluations through the first 6 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just shows growth. And now, can you sustain it and build upon it? That'll be the question for Kenny Pickett in year 2.
All right.
Anything else?
I think we got through most of them. We probably got to kind of get this wrapped up as well too here. So if you have any questions moving forward for the podcast, we'll be back on Friday, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, at SteelersDepot.com. If you can even get on Twitter at Alex_Kozora, if you're not rate limited, if you will. Once again, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate to the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right, navigational bar. And as always, if you want an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button up right, navigational bar. Until Friday, as always, happy 4th of July, everybody. And as always, thanks for listening to The Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.